Hello, this is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. Voting is underway in elections for Japan's upper house of parliament. It comes just days after the assassination of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Guy Pitt reports.
Analysts suggest Mr Abe's murder could boost support for the governing Liberal Democratic Party, of which he was the leading statesman. He was shot dead while campaigning for a local party candidate in the western city of Nara. Campaigning was briefly halted after the attack, but resumed on Saturday. There was an especially high police presence around the current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, a protégé of Mr Abe. Polls last week suggested that the LDP could win 60 of the 125 seats being contested, allowing it to maintain the majority in the chamber, which it holds with its junior coalition partner Komeito.
The United States has appealed to Sri Lanka's politicians to act promptly to resolve their country's economic crisis. An announcement that the Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa would step down on Wednesday came after protesters seized his official residence and set the Prime Minister's home on fire. A spokesperson for the US State Department said any prospective new government should implement solutions that would achieve long-term economic stability. Harsha De Silva, an opposition MP, said a new administration would help Sri Lanka deal better with current problems.
What is different is that the Rajapaksas will no longer be associated with the administration. And we are hopeful that without the Rajapaksas, there would be a greater legitimacy, both internally and externally, for the new administration. So that is a big difference.
Two more former cabinet ministers have announced they'll stand in the contest to be the leader of Britain's Conservative Party and replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Earlier, Britain's current Finance Minister, Nadhim Zahawi, said he was entering the race. Here's Jonathan Blake.
The race to succeed Boris Johnson is gathering pace. Nadhim Zahawi was appointed Chancellor 4 days ago. The former Education Secretary had been tipped as a possible successor for some time and impressed many with his handling of the COVID vaccine rollout. Jeremy Hunt, who was beaten by Boris Johnson in the final round of 2019, will pitch to win back trust. The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak is the early frontrunner. His resignation followed Sajid Javid's last week, triggering Boris Johnson's final demise.
President Biden has moved to defend his planned trip to Saudi Arabia next week, which he said many people disagreed with. In an opinion piece for the Washington Post newspaper, Mr Biden said he aimed to strengthen a strategic partnership with the kingdom while holding true to fundamental American values. He said his views on human rights were clear and that fundamental freedoms were always on the agenda when he travelled abroad. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. Thousands of people in Argentina have taken part in a protest against the government's handling of the country's economic crisis. Argentina is struggling with inflation of more than 60% and a weak currency, as well as the global rise in food and energy prices. A militant left wing of the ruling coalition wants more state spending to ease high poverty levels. Hundreds of pro-gun demonstrators have marched in the Brazilian capital, Brasilia, to demand further relaxations to firearms laws. The demonstrators, marching under the slogan, "We don't walk for weapons, we walk for freedom," demanded the right to bear arms. 45-year-old Thais Goes is among them.
We are here today representing an entire nation, and it's not about guns, it's about freedom, because they want to take away our freedom. And it is important to have this whole movement here so that we can show our strength.
The son of President Bolsonaro, Eduardo, who's a federal deputy, told the crowd that if people were armed, criminals would think twice. The US Secretary of the Interior has heard from Native American tribal elders about their painful experiences at government-backed boarding schools. Survivors at an Indian school in Oklahoma State told Deb Harland about the hardships they had endured, including beatings, sexual assaults and offensive nicknames. The US government recently released a report identifying more than 400 such schools which sought to assimilate Native Americans into white society from the late 18th century to the 1960s. Hundreds of thousands of people have taken part in the annual Pride March in the Spanish capital, Madrid, which had been cancelled for the previous 2 years because of the COVID pandemic. Marchers waved rainbow flags and danced to samba and techno music in searing heat. Several ministers from Spain's left-wing coalition government joined in. BBC News.